Welcome, everyone, to Real Estate 360 Live. I'm your host, Ryan Sloper. For those of you not familiar with the show, my guest and I will cover every angle of real estate under the sun, from interest rates to the economy to what's happening in Washington. Anything that affects our local markets will be covered here. If you got credit issues, you're trying to get them sorted out so that you're able to purchase your first home or your second home, whatever it may be, and your credit is the thing hindering and holding you back. We work with the best credit experts around and that are most of the time successful and able to, get your credit back in line, whether it's silly, parking tickets that have showed up on your credit report or information that's being, reported improperly. We can fix those items very quickly and get you on the path to home ownership. And if you're looking to refinance to the lowest rates in U.S. history and you're looking for a reputable lender that you can work with, one of the companies that we prefer to work with is Gold Star Financial. They're fantastic, great rates, great service, and if they say that your loan is going to close, it's going to close. You're not going to have any last-second hiccups. And any other questions, whether in regards to buying or selling real estate, I can answer those questions for you personally. And if it's something that that needs a further look by another person, another professional, I can get their eyes on that as well. The best number to reach out to us is our off-air phone number, which is 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. Or you can visit us via the web at realestate360live.com. That's realestate360live.com. And make sure you tune in and join us every Monday on 1580 a.m. from 9 to 10 in the morning. And we're waiting for your call. Remember, if it's real estate, it's covered here. We've got a great show lined up for you guys today. We're going to be discussing many things that have been going on in the markets from last week, as well as what's on deck this week. We've got the fiscal cliff to talk about. We've got numerous questions from you listeners out there that I want to get those questions answered. We also have the credit score tip of the week to help you make sure that your credit stays intact and get your credit scores moving higher. We're also going to touch on the home gain release of the fourth quarter 2012 home value survey. Which direction are home values headed? We'll let you know that coming up in about 15 minutes. Also, we're going to cover Bank of America's CEO has said that private investment is a certainty that it's going to return to the mortgage market. I'll let you know, what that means and where he thinks the mortgage markets are headed. So coming up, that'll all be coming up within the program, and I wanted to start the show by just discussing this week's market movers, which is going to let you know what's going on in the markets that can affect interest rates. Obviously, you guys that are on the fence and have a mortgage but haven't yet locked in your interest rate, you want to kind of stay in tune and in touch with what's going on to make sure that you're locking in at the appropriate time. So this week we have a number of key economic reports on tap. We have the November housing starts and permits. We have the existing home sales. We have the Philly Fed Business Index, personal income and spending for November, and the final Q3 GDP report. Of course, there's going to be still much debate of the cliff, and we're going to have to, really pay attention to what's going on with the fiscal cliff. Obviously, there's been a lot of wrestling back and forth between Congress and the president, and it's going to be interesting to see if they are able to come up with a plan by the end of the year. Just recently, last week, Republicans had said that they were offering to increase taxes on millionaires, but will that satisfy the president? Likely, it's probably not, because he's made it quite clear that he wants taxes to be on a lot more taxpayers. And just for the millionaires, I don't know if that's going to be good enough. So it's just kind of crazy because we're coming down to the wire here. And, I would say that probably if we don't get something done by the end of this week, we've got a couple days next week, but then there's Christmas there, so it's going to be a short week for the markets. So I don't think that we're going to get anything accomplished before the end of the year, so they're going to have to push that off to the next year. This is such a big precedent issue. I mean, we have basically Wall Street and the bond markets are pretty much at a standstill just because this is such a big issue. If we don't get something sorted out, I mean, it could be devastating to the stock market, obviously devastating to the bond market. But the big question is that does Congress realize how big of an issue this is, and are they going to take it serious enough to make sure that they iron out the differences? I hope so. I hope so. Interest rates, the big question for many people is, okay, well, what does that mean for mortgage interest rates if they don't get anything sorted out? Well, we've actually ticked up in interest rates over this last month, and we were at the highest interest rate levels of December as of the end of last week. So I don't really see interest rates moving too much higher in the near term. But we have seen a tick up, and it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. Also, later this week, the Treasury will be auctioning off $99 billion of notes beginning Monday through Wednesday. They're going to be auctioning off 2-year, 5-year, and 7-year notes. Technically, the near-term outlook remains slightly bearish for the bond markets and mortgage-backed security markets. The bond markets, like I said, they're being pretty much held captive by the fiscal cliff talks, and we're not seeing too much one way or the other. But this is something to definitely keep your eye on. And remember, if you're out there and you're trying to decipher what's going on in the market and how that's going to affect interest rates, and you'd like me to give you, my opinion, reach out to me on the off-air phone number. It's 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. Joining me on our panel today is Louis Cammarosano, who is the general manager of HomeGain. Louis is often cited in the media as an industry expert in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, CNN Money, Fox Business, Smart Money, MSN, and numerous others. He's going to join me today to discuss the many issues. Louis, are you there, buddy? I guess we're trying to get him back online. We'll have him online shortly. But we're going to jump back into the many questions that I've had from listeners over the last few weeks, which one of the first ones is, I'm going through a short sale. This is from Jim. And Jim had said that I'm going through a short sale. I'm in the process of a short sale, and he wants to know where does the BPO fall. The BPO is basically a broker price opinion, which typically, when you're in a short sale transaction, basically where you owe more on your house than your property is actually worth, you have to do a short sale, which basically you're shorting the lender the full amount of money that they're supposed to receive. Now, different banks send out another agent. This isn't the listing agent that's going to do the BPO. This is going to be an independent agent that they just randomly select that's going to go out and look at the property. Some they're going to do from the exterior only, and some they'll do an exterior and interior. But Jim's question is specifically saying, when does this BPO take place? Well, some of them will actually do a BPO prior to the house actually going, on the market. They can give you basically a pre-approved price that you can put the house on the market. And others, they won't send out that agent to do the BPO until after you already have a contract on the property. So the listing agent puts on the property on the market for $300,000. They get a contract for $295,000. They submit that into the bank for bank approval, and then it could be 2 or 3 weeks later the bank sends out another agent to go and do a BPO on that property to give a valuation. Now remember, this isn't an appraisal. Very few banks are actually sending out appraisers to determine value. They're using other agents, getting a BPO done, and also probably using some electronic online format to determine what they feel is the best value. So, Jim, to answer your question, it depends on the bank. I would need to know, which banks you're dealing with. We've had success working with numerous different banks, but they all have a different set of guidelines, a different process, and protocols that they follow. If you're having a problem because you have a contract and the bank's BPO is coming in much higher than your contract price, that is pretty common. I mean, very rarely will the bank ever come back at exactly the price that you have a contract for. They're always going to try to get as much money out of that house as they possibly can. So there's going to be some negotiations back and forth that takes place between the buyer and the actual bank, because they're going to want to counter the buyer back, and they'll probably counter back high. So if that's the problem that you guys are having, is that the buyer's going to walk because the price is too high, what we've been able to do, and we've been very successful in doing this, is we actually will go and have a full-blown appraisal ordered, where I would, as the listing agent, I would order an appraisal from, just an appraiser at random and say, hey, look, I have a contract at $295,000, and I need to get a full-blown appraisal so that I can dispute this value with the bank. Disputing the value is the best thing that you can do with a full-blown appraisal, because it's very hard for the bank to actually argue with an appraisal versus a BPO. I mean, the BPOs could vary from one agent to the next. So, it's very important that, you have an appraisal, because then you can go back to the bank and say, look, these are the comparables that are out there right now. These are the houses that have sold in the last 3 months, and it's coming from an appraiser. If the bank if they're any type of smart, which at this point they would have to be if you're sending them an appraisal, because they know that the buyer's only going to be able to get a loan on what the appraisal amount came in at, not what the BPO amount is. The appraisal could be, $295,000, but the BPO could be $320. It doesn't matter that the agent just thinks that that's what the price of it is. The appraisal pretty much, validates it. And actually, I have a transaction that's going on right now we've used that same tactic. We originally listed the property for $429,000. The property almost was on the market for probably 6, 8, 9 months. So every month we were strategically lowering that sales price down by like $10,000 to $15,000, and until we got all the way down to $365,000, it finally got a contract. And this is after like 9 months of being on the market. So I won't name the bank, but we submitted into the bank the contract. It was basically a full price offer at the $365,000. They submitted all of the seller's necessary items, the tax returns, the W-2s, all the income that they needed, along with the letter of hardship that they have that they wanted to get the bank to agree to the short sale. So the bank comes back and they said, well, based upon this, and they sent out a person to do a BPO on the property, which I'm not privy to what number they came back at, but they ended up countering us back at $420,000, which is almost the full list price that I had listed the home almost 9 months prior. Didn't make any sense, because we're saying, here, look, so we strategically set the price high to begin with, try to get the maximum out for the bank to, try to help them recoup as much of their losses as possible, lowered it down, and they weren't budging off of the 420 number. So we ordered an appraisal. The appraisal came in at $370,000. So the buyer at that point was like, okay, that's no big deal. It's only $5,000 more than I was going to pay. I'm willing to raise my offer. So we raised the offer up to the list price, actually the appraised value price, and it looks like now this transaction is going to go through. Now, had we not done that, had we not ordered that appraisal, chances are they probably would have went nowhere. It would have just been a dead deal. It would end up probably going into foreclosure. So the long and short of the story is that you really just need to be working with a professional that understands the short sale market. That really knows working with different banks, because like I said, every bank has, their sticking points, and sometimes there's things that you can do, like ordering appraisal, that would really help your chances. I know a lot of people get frustrated with the whole short sale process because it can be very arduous and time consuming, and it wears you out, because you're going back and forth with the bank and you just want to be out of the house. And a short sale makes sense for many people because you're trying to avoid foreclosure. You don't want to have to take those bad credit hits. Many times, if you have a legitimate hardship, if you went through a divorce, you had a death in the family, if you lost your job, so your income's been cut in half, if you have one of those hardships, and even, another hardship that many people don't know about is if you're a growing family and you're getting ready to have another child and the space is not going to be big enough for your family, that's a legitimate enough hardship for most banks that you're able to get out of it via a short sale and potentially not have to even miss any payments. So there's numerous things that are very beneficial to doing a short sale, but the main one is that, you could be back on the path to home ownership in as little as 2 to 3 years, and sometimes sooner, depending upon what your hardship was. But the thing that you need to do is reach out to a professional before you, jump into anything. Find out the facts. 877-245-2030. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Louis Cammarosano to discuss the 2012 Homes Value Survey. Stay right there.